property deed for my house in Kelowna had been sitting in the same drawer for 31 years. I knew exactly where it was. Third drawer down, left side of my oak desk, behind the folder of warranty cards for appliances I'd replaced decades ago. Eleanor and I had bought that house the spring before our daughter was born, when mortgage rates were still brutal and we'd scraped together every dollar we had for the down payment. We celebrated with a bottle of cheap Okanagan wine and fish and chips on the back porch, and Eleanor said it smelled like cedar and possibility. She was right. It always did. Eleanor passed away 2 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. 8 weeks from diagnosis to the end. I'm 68 years old, retired from 30 years as a land surveyor for the provincial government, and I've learned that life doesn't slow down to let you grieve properly. It just keeps moving, and either you move with it or it drags you. My daughter's name is Yvonne. She's 39, married to a man named Clifford, and they live about 20 minutes from me in West Kelowna. After Eleanor died, Yvonne came over almost every day. She'd bring soup, sit with me, watch the news. I was grateful. I told her so. I told Clifford so too, though I'd never entirely warmed to him. He worked in real estate development and had the kind of smile that arrived slightly before the rest of his face. It was a small thing that first made me uneasy. In November, about 14 months after Eleanor's funeral, Yvonne brought up the house. "Dad, have you thought about what you're going to do with this place long term? It's a lot for one person." I told her I hadn't thought about it much. I liked the house. It was mine. "Clifford has some ideas," she said. "Just options. No pressure." I said I'd think about it and changed the subject, but something settled in my chest that evening. A low, dull feeling I couldn't quite name. I'd felt it before. Back when a contractor tried to overcharge me on the fence repair, and later when a colleague at work was quietly nudging his name onto a project that wasn't his. A kind of radar developed over a lifetime of dealing with people who want something they haven't earned. I ignored it. She was my daughter. She'd sat beside me when I signed Eleanor's death certificate. She'd held my hand at the burial. By February, Clifford had started dropping by on his own. "Just to check in," he said. He'd walk through the rooms with his hands in his pockets, not exactly snooping, but not exactly not snooping either. He commented on the square footage twice. He mentioned the lot size once, very casually, the way you mention something you've already looked up. One evening, he sat across from me at the kitchen table with a folder. "We've been talking to a financial advisor," he said. "A trust specialist, actually. His name is Raymond Poole. Very reputable, worked with a lot of families in the valley. He has some thoughts about estate planning that could protect you and benefit everyone." He slid a business card across the table. "Raymond Poole, Estate and Trust Services, an address on Harvey Avenue." "I'm not planning to die anytime soon," I said. Clifford laughed. "Of course not. It's just smart planning, Gordon. You know how property values are in Kelowna right now. The house alone is worth... Well, Raymond can walk you through the numbers." Gordon. He always called me Gordon, even though I'd never once invited him to. I was either Dad or I was nothing. I took the card. I nodded. I did not call Raymond Poole, but I started paying attention. I went back through the past year in my mind, the way you go back through a document looking for the error you know is there, the conversations about the house, the questions about my RRSP, the time Yvonne asked, very gently, whether I'd updated my will since Eleanor died, the way Clifford had started referring to the property as the family asset, as if it already belonged to everyone. I mentioned it to my old friend Doug one afternoon when we were driving back from a fishing trip near Summerland. Doug is 71, sharp as anyone I know, spent his career as a paralegal before he retired. I told him what had been happening and he was quiet for a long moment, watching the road. "Has Clifford ever pushed you to sign anything?" he asked. "Not yet." "Yet," Doug said. That single word sat with me for days. In March, Yvonne called to say she and Clifford were going to Victoria for a long weekend. A real estate conference, she said, something Clifford needed to attend. Would I be all right on my own? I said, of course, I was always all right on my own. After I hung up, I made a decision. I'm not sure exactly when the idea formed. somewhere between the fishing trip and that phone call, but it arrived fully built, the way some decisions do. I would tell Yvonne I was going to spend the same weekend with my brother in Penticton. My brother Owen, who I called that evening and explained the situation to, and who immediately agreed to cover for me without asking a single question, because that's what Owen does. I was not going to Penticton. I was going to stay home, out of sight, and watch. I booked 3 nights at a motel on the edge of downtown Kelowna, a quiet place near Pando Sea, cash payment. I packed a bag Thursday morning and made sure my car was visible in the driveway until early afternoon, then drove it to the motel's back lot. I told no one except Owen. By Thursday evening, I was sitting in the motel room with a pair of binoculars, a thermos of coffee, and a sick, heavy feeling in my stomach that I very much hoped was going to turn out to be paranoia. Friday was quiet. I drove past the house twice, slowly, nothing unusual. Saturday morning, nothing. I was beginning to think I'd made a fool of myself, that I was a grieving old man inventing problems because grief needed somewhere to go. Saturday afternoon, Clifford's truck appeared in my driveway. He wasn't supposed to be in Kelowna, he was supposed to be in Victoria. I parked 2 houses down, behind a hedge, binoculars up. Clifford got out of the truck. He was on the phone, talking, glancing around the yard. Then he walked to the front door and let himself in. He had a key to my house. I had never given him a key to my house. My hands were shaking. I set the binoculars down. I picked them back up. 30 minutes later, a second car arrived. A gray Audi I didn't recognize. A man got out, mid-50s, dark jacket, briefcase. He checked his phone, looked at the house number, and walked up my front path and knocked. Clifford answered the door and let him in. That was the moment my radar stopped being a feeling and became a fact. I took photos with my phone through the binoculars, clumsy but legible enough. I noted the time, 2:17 p.m. I wrote down the Audi's license plate. Then I drove back to the motel and called Owen. "They're in the house," I said. "Clifford and some other man." Owen was quiet. "Who's the other man?" "I don't know yet." "Get the plate checked." I had a contact from my years with the province, a retired RCMP officer named Harold who did private investigative work out of Vernon. I'd used him once before for a property dispute. I texted him the plate number and told him it was urgent. I didn't sleep Saturday night. I lay in the motel bed and thought about Eleanor, about the day we got the keys to that house, about the cedar smell she loved. I thought about 31 years of mortgage payments, of maintenance, of the garden she built along the back fence. I thought about Yvonne at 12 years old, doing cartwheels across that back lawn. I thought about how people change, or maybe about how they don't, and we just stop seeing them clearly. Harold called back Sunday morning. The Audi was registered to a company called Pacific Summit Holdings. A quick search showed Pacific Summit Holdings had 3 directors. One of them was Raymond Poole. I sat with that for a long time. Raymond Poole, who Clifford had presented to me as a neutral family financial advisor, was in fact a business partner, or at minimum a close associate, of whatever Clifford was running through Pacific Summit Holdings. He wasn't there to protect my interests. He was there to help move my assets somewhere else, and he was using my daughter's marriage and my trust in her to get close enough to do it. I called Doug on Sunday afternoon and told him everything. "Property transfer fraud," Doug said without any drama. Classic pattern. They soften the mark, introduce a trusted professional, get signatures on documents the target doesn't fully understand. The house would have been the primary target. Maybe the RRSP accounts too. "They haven't gotten signatures yet," I said. "Then you still have everything," Doug said, "but you need to move fast." Monday morning, I was at my lawyer's office when it opened. My lawyer is a woman named Patricia Hennessy, someone I'd worked with on property matters for 15 years. I told her everything and laid out all my documentation. The photos, the license plate, Harold's report on Pacific Summit Holdings, the business card Clifford had given me for Raymond Poole, and a record I'd kept on my phone of dates and times and conversations going back to November. Patricia listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "Has he asked you to sign anything?" "Not yet." "Good. We're going to make sure that window never opens." She recommended I contact the BC Securities Commission and file a complaint about Raymond Poole. She also advised me to have the locks changed immediately and to formally revoke any implied access Clifford might claim through his marriage to my daughter. She drafted a letter that afternoon to be sent to both Clifford and Poole, putting them on notice that all contact regarding my estate or property was to go through her office only. She also said gently that I needed to think carefully about Yvonne. That was the hardest part. I'd been holding the question at arm's length all weekend because looking at it directly was too painful. Was Yvonne complicit? Did she know what Clifford was doing? Did she know about Pacific Summit Holdings? About Poole? About the key he'd somehow gotten to my house? I drove home Monday afternoon. The locks were being changed by a locksmith when I arrived. I stood in the driveway and looked at the house and thought about Eleanor saying it smelled like cedar and possibility. And I made myself breathe. Yvonne called that evening. "Dad, I heard from Clifford. He said you'd had the locks changed and contacted a lawyer. What's going on?" Her voice sounded genuinely confused, genuinely frightened. That's what broke something open in me. I couldn't tell. I still can't entirely tell whether it was the confusion of someone who'd been kept in the dark by her own husband or the confusion of someone caught. "I need you to come over," I said, "alone, not with Clifford. I need to talk to you." She came. She sat across from me at the same kitchen table where Clifford had laid out his folder, and I told her everything. The binoculars. Clifford letting himself in. The gray Audi. Raymond Poole and Pacific Summit Holdings. The business relationship Doug had helped me understand. She cried. A lot. She said she didn't know. She said she'd met Poole once for dinner, that Clifford had described him as a family friend, that she hadn't known about any business connection. She said she didn't know how Clifford had gotten a key. I looked at my daughter and I thought about 39 years of knowing her, from the morning she was born in Kelowna General to the afternoon she stood beside me at her mother's grave, and I thought, I don't know. I genuinely don't know. What I did know was what Patricia had told me, that not knowing is not the same as being innocent, and that until everything was clear, I needed to protect myself. 2 weeks later, the BC Securities Commission opened an inquiry into Raymond Poole's business practices. 3 other families in the Okanagan had apparently been approached through similar means. Patricia told me I wasn't the first, and that I was lucky I had moved when I did. In 2 of the other cases, property transfers had already been initiated. Clifford retained a lawyer. He denied everything and claimed the visit to my house was simply to retrieve a garden tool Yvonne had lent me, which he had a key for because Yvonne kept one for emergencies. He could not explain Raymond Poole's presence. He could not explain the Pacific Summit Holdings connection. His lawyer was very good at asking questions and very quiet when it came to answering them. Yvonne filed for separation in April. I don't take any satisfaction in that. I want to be honest about that. You'd think I would. A father whose son-in-law tried to defraud him watches the marriage fall apart, and somewhere there should be a sense of justice served. But all I felt was tired and sad for my daughter, and aware that she was going to spend a long time sorting out what she'd known and when, and whether she'd looked away from something she should have seen. That's between her and herself. I can't answer it for her. What I can tell you is this. The house is still mine. The deed is still in the 3rd drawer, left side of the desk, behind the old warranty cards. On a Sunday afternoon in May, I sat on the back porch with a cup of coffee and listened to the wind come down off the mountains the way it does in the Okanagan evenings, cool and clean and smelling of pine, and I thought about Eleanor saying it smelled like cedar and possibility. She was right, the first time she said it. She's still right now. There's a version of this story where I believed Clifford, where I called Raymond Poole, where I signed something I didn't understand on a table surrounded by people who were smiling at me. I think about that version sometimes. I think about how easy it would have been to be that man, a grieving widower, lonely, wanting to trust the people closest to him, not wanting to believe that the hands extended toward him were reaching for his pockets. I chose differently. Not because I'm smarter or stronger than other men my age, because 30 years of surveying land teaches you something about precision, about the difference between what a document says and what it means, about reading the line between what belongs to you and what someone else is trying to claim. I picked up those binoculars for the same reason I spent a career taking measurements, because if you want to know where the boundary is, you have to look carefully. You can't just take someone's word for it. The cedar smell is still there, on the evenings when the wind is right. I open the back door, and it comes in like a reminder. I chose to stay. I chose to look. And everything I spent a lifetime building is still exactly where Eleanor and I put it. 31 years ago, when we were young and hopeful and the house smelled like the future we were going to make together. That's enough. That has always been enough. The binoculars are still sitting on the shelf in my bedroom. I haven't put them away. I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe because they remind me of something I need to keep remembering. When I think back on everything that happened, I don't think about Clifford first. I think about myself. About the months I spent noticing things and then talking myself out of what I'd noticed. The folder on the kitchen table, the way he said Gordon instead of Dad, the casual mention of lot sizes. Every one of those moments was information. I chose for a long time to file it away somewhere I didn't have to look at it. That's not a small thing to admit. There's a direct line between what we let ourselves see and what happens to us. I don't mean that as blame. Grief does something to your vision, genuinely. After Eleanor died, I wanted the people around me to be trustworthy. I needed them to be, and so for a while, I bent what I was seeing to fit what I needed. That's human, but it's also how people get hurt. What finally moved me wasn't anger. It was a question Doug asked on the drive back from Summerland. Just one word, really. Yet. He didn't tell me what to do. He just held up a mirror at the right moment, and I had to decide whether to look into it honestly. That decision, to actually look, clearly and without flinching, was the one that changed everything. Not the binoculars. Not Harold's report on Pacific Summit Holdings. The decision to stop managing my own discomfort and start dealing with reality. I think about what it took to make that decision. You need a certain kind of honesty with yourself first. Not the version of honesty where you tell other people hard truths, the quieter kind, where you sit alone in a motel room and admit that someone you love may have failed you and that you still have to act. That's the harder thing. It's easier to keep the peace. It's easier to believe the best. Sometimes the most decent thing you can do for yourself is refuse to look away, even when looking hurts. And then, once you've seen clearly, you have to be steady enough to do something with what you've seen. Patricia moving fast. Owen covering without hesitation. Harold making calls. None of that happened because I was lucky. It happened because 30 years of careful work had taught me that precision matters. That the distance between what a document says and what it means is exactly the distance someone dishonest is counting on you not to measure. Clifford counted on me being tired and trusting and a little lost without Eleanor. He wasn't entirely wrong about the lost part, but he miscalculated the rest. The house still smells like cedar when the wind comes down off the mountains. The deed is still in the third drawer, and I'm still here, which is the whole point. If there's anything I'd want someone else to take from this, it's that your instincts are data. Your discomfort is data. The small wrong thing that keeps catching your attention, that's data too. You don't have to act on it dramatically or immediately, but you owe it to yourself to look at it clearly, without apology, and then decide what to do from a place of real knowledge rather than managed hope. That's what I did. Late, maybe. Later than I should have, but not too late. That has to count for something.